What is up, everybody? What is up? Happy Friday. Happy Friday. The end of the week after pulling 12-hour plus, really, day shifts. Um, Now I get to relax here on my day off with my boy here. He's eating his grub, watching some Bluey. And I'm like, you know what? Let's do a live show. We put out an article yesterday. We'll put that article link right there in the comments section. Totally a companion to what we're going to be talking about today. Um, of course, all about LSU's recent hire. Brian Kelly, we just posted that link in there. Brian Kelly, for all intents and purposes, really, he hit this out of the park. He hit this out of the park. Um, oh, crap. I think I actually had a YouTube thing going on that whole time. Sorry. We're going to talk about Brian Kelly's recent defensive hires. He really hit them all out of the park, I think. There's a few that are wild cards, though. There's a few that we really don't know how things will turn out. I think there's a few of those guys that I'm sure are going to be, almost as sure of a thing as like Brad Davis has been at LSU, Frank Wilson's return. I think there's some of those guys that Brian Kelly has just hired. So I'm excited to who he's going to bring as an offensive coordinator, potentially at LSU. So we're going to get into the offensive coordinator part as well, but we are also going to go through every defensive hire, just like we did in our article, which we just posted the link to there in the comments section if you want to check that out. Really, you had Kelly at a crossroads, really, for his time at LSU. Let's get some light on here. And let's get this as well. Our LSU mug. I don't even know if you can see this damn thing from there. There we go. Boom. And Brian Kelly's kind of at a crossroads in his LSU career. Are you going to keep Matt House like some were forecasting? Are you going to dare to do such a crazy, crazy madman thing like keep that guy? Or are you going to do the sensible thing and turn the page here? But now you've got a lot of work to be done over the next month, You've got to hire guys. You got to hire the best of the best in every slot. Defensive line, defensive coordinator to begin with, a new complete philosophy, everything. But then new defensive line coach, new linebackers coach potentially, new safeties coach potentially, depending on the specialty of the defensive coordinator, new corners coach. It's just the whole thing it seemed like an incredible task for Brian Kelly, and I was wondering, this is crazy. This is going to be very insightful for where Kelly's tenure at LSU is going to end up. Like where he's going to end up as a coach at LSU, how he's going to be remembered is going to be, maybe the seeds of that are going to be judged by what he does here, who he signs here at this juncture in his LSU tenure. And what did he do? What did Scott Woodward help him to do? What did the president, Tate, do to really help him get over the line? They gave him the money to go get Bo Davis and get Bo Davis over the line, raising his wage by $250,000 a year from $1 million to $1.25 million to prize him away from Texas. After all these years, a few attempts from Brian Kelly himself to get Bo Davis from Texas. It takes Texas going all the way to their first college football playoff, and it takes LSU being at their worst as a defensive line and being screwed from a roster perspective as well. You and I both saw the report from Football Scoop saying that Bo Davis rejecting LSU a week before Bo Davis would ultimately sign. I could never find a source that would confirm that Bo Davis had done that. they'd all said, wait and see, or they'd say something like, oh, well, no, actually, it's closer than that. Or they would say, all sorts of different things. And it was kind of hard to kind of pick through the weeds there. And in the end, it seemed like they're either going to have to spend big here on a guy like Bo Davis and go get him, go get the man, really, the president, the prez of D line coaching, or, settle, really. Because anybody else would kind of be settling, and when you already know Kelly's number one target is Bo freaking Davis. And Woodward, Kelly, Tate, the combination, whoever made it happen, secured the funding, made it possible. And there was a lot of, LSU didn't have the money, or LSU had the money. It's just the foundation, the NIL collective, isn't centralized enough to get that type of money, to generate that type of money, because it's being spread out through all the other sports. You have certain donors who are baseball guys, certain donors who are all about gymnastics, certain donors that, are very invested in LSU soccer. Like you have it all over the place. Of course, pure football boosters too. So it's it really was just like a hit over the head situation. Like, hey, everybody needs to pull together here and just get behind LSU football, because that's the golden goose. We all know that for the LSU program success financially as well. And they made it happen. They got the funding to get Bo Davis and then go all out as well from there. Because, Blake Baker led the whole thing here. Blake Baker is the defensive coordinator. I'm really excited about him as the defensive coordinator, and it's not because I think he's an X's and O's like genius mastermind, but I think he's got the right mentality to give this young defense a lot of confidence and take chances, take risks by playing some of these guys more than, say, Matt House was doing. Because Matt House, giving 5 snaps to a guy like Sean Womack, and he'd have like a sack and a half and all this stuff without his helmet on, and he's killing people out there, and he'd be played 5 snaps. Like, I don't see that type of soul-destroying stuff happening. I think Blake Baker is going to play the right guys, and he's not going to give into the politics. Poe English says, "What's up, my guy? What are you hearing about getting down to 85 scholarship players and who might get processed?" We're kind of in the middle of a whole nother discussion. We'll hold that one for another second. Poe. Stanalon, too, says, "Hyped on Bo Davis, concerned about Raymond." We're going to get into that when we talk about Corey Raymond, because a lot of people have said that. Is this just another Tiger retread? He's going back to safe hires, I don't know how you can say it's like a safe hire, a guy that's a retread, when it's like Baker was there for a single season as linebackers coach. I get you. Maybe you could have that argument for Corey Raymond, but he's been extremely successful at LSU, except for 2 seasons where no one was successful at LSU, except for like a few individual performers at random moments. So he was still recruited at a high level at Florida. Guys like Kamari Wilson, getting those guys and taking them from LSU, really. A few other guys as well, names escaping me while he was at Florida, but he was not overly successful there, had to get out of there, comes back to LSU now. You would think the feeling into going, back home, this is the place I started all this stuff. I'm doing it now under the coach that technically fired my ass. Like the whole situation in my mind would kind of light this secret fire. Wouldn't you think? You have a bunch of guys that haven't really been proven, haven't really been even overall that much tested. And then there's a few guys who were burnt all over the field last year and really went through the gauntlet of being a defensive back in the SEC, because they got burnt to a crisp. They were taught lesson after lesson after lesson. Now, we're going to see if Corey Raymond has what it takes, because this, and we're going to see it very quickly here, because this season, with the film we just saw, any football coach worth a damn should be able to take that film and translate it to what they're doing now and say, look at how you fucked up here. Look at how you made huge mistakes here and how we can fix these habits out of you. You know, we're going to end this soft coverage stuff. We're going to be jamming them up at the line. We're playing man-to-man coverage. You know, we're going to play the right guys. We're going to play guys who should be safety at safety. We're going to play guys who should be corners at corners. We're going to play nickels where they should be. You know, it might be a more traditional setup. It might not be as exotic maybe as you would like. Maybe this defense or with Corey Raymond, maybe they won't be that shut down as you would like in year one. Maybe not even by year two. But as long as there's a difference in mindset, a difference in presence out there, a difference in distance at the line of scrimmage, aggression, we'll take it, you know, with Corey Raymond. And I think at a minimum, you're going to get that. At a minimum, you're going to get that. 1 second. So, you know, kind of as we got into with the article, Blake Baker was kind of the guy who started off first. You know, you bring in a defensive coordinator like Blake Baker. Okay, Blake, you know, Missouri were fantastic defensively last season. Fantastic defensively last season. Let me show you something here. Just looking at their entire schedule overview, when you just look at it on paper, what they did against the opposition, it's very, very impressive. They allowed 3 points to Ohio State, number 7 Ohio State, only allowed 3 points. The first time since 2016, Ohio State had not scored a touchdown. Okay, they allowed 30 points to number 2 Georgia in their offense. Only one team scored more than 31 points on them. That's, of course, Jaden Daniels, Mike Denbrock, the Lake Neighbors, you know, Brian Thomas Jr. in that LSU offense, scoring 49 on them. That was a big disappointment for Blake Baker and Kevin Peoples and Jake Olson and them. But if you look at it all, you know, 35-10 over South Dakota, 23-19 over Middle Tennessee. My God, they almost lost to Middle Tennessee. Wow, I did not know that. 30-27 in another escape against Kansas State, but a solid defensive effort against Memphis. 34-27. You know, there's some close games for Missouri here last season, and then now they get into their stride. 38-21 over Vandy, but then they lose a game they had a big momentum and a big lead. Double-digit lead over LSU, but they still lose that game. Our offense was just too much, 49-39. Our defense was able to do enough in that second half. Kentucky, they show their might again, 38-21, only giving up 21 points in that game to number 24, Kentucky. South Carolina, 34-12. And then they lose to Georgia at number 2 Georgia, 21-30. Only, you know, just barely into a 2-possession game. 9-point loss, and only allow 30 points to the reigning 2-time national champions. And then number 13 Tennessee, 36-7, live on CBS. Number 13 Tennessee, 36-7. I just beat the shit out of them. You know, 33-31, squeak a win over Florida. Show their dominance, 48-14 at Arkansas. And then show their dominance again, 14-3 over Ohio State. Allowed 20.8 points per game last season. This is held 6 opponents under 20 points last season. Held 6 opponents under 20 points. This is a guy, Blake Baker, as the 2021 linebackers coach, as part of the Coach Ed Orgeron regime in the last years of the Coach O era. And there's a lot of people who credited the rise of Damone Clark to Blake Baker, maybe in his confidence building. I'm not too sure. Maybe we should see what Damone Clark has to say about that. I think Damone Clark has gone on record praising him and giving him credit, but I would love to see what Damone Clark would say in private. But I think maybe you'd see Damone Clark probably saying the same thing. Damone Clark's a pretty straight-up dude. We've got 2 comments here. Patrick B., I know it's an unpopular take that 2021 defense should have gotten a look at staying in. That some of them got rehired 2 years later, I feel somewhat justified. That's an interesting, 6 rushing yards allowed to Alabama. I've always said, Durante Jones, he only had a few games to really coach his defense, and when he did, LSU looked unbelievable defensively. 6 rushing yards allowed to Alabama, only 20 points. If Max Johnson can hang in the pocket and actually take a hit while delivering the football to a wide-open Jack Besh, a wide-open Malik Neighbors, that we win that game. So only scoring 14 points in that game for LSU, when you go back and watch it, is an atrocity. We had so many chances to actually hurt Alabama because our defense were so good that game. Jay Ward almost decapitated Bryce Young. I mean, this was against a Heisman-winning quarterback, and I believe the number 1 team in the country at the time, undefeated. And, of course, they still won. This was in Tuscaloosa as well, so LSU were on the road. LSU with half of their starters, more than half of their starters gone. Both starting corners, a few linebackers gone, defensive linemen are gone, safeties are gone. So many different guys are gone. Stingley Jr. is gone. Andre Anthony tore his ACL. Ali Gay was gone with a broken hand. It was crazy how many different injuries there were. And you saw guys like Dwight McLaughlin, who, future All-American, who would transfer and become a future All-American at Arkansas, who we should have kept on the damn team. He was awesome. He stepped up. Damone Clark stepped up. And you saw Durante Jones coach the hell out of that defense. Neil Farrell Jr. is another guy who stepped up. Jaquelin Roy. You saw that defense, that defensive staff were awesome for a period there when they were allowed to actually coach their freaking defense. But here's the thing. Kelly, he always is going to come in and just kind of wipe everybody out and just start fresh, start over. And he tried something that looked like it might work in 2022. We can all admit it right now in here. That defense in 2022 had its moments where they won us games. They turned games around, and they led comebacks. But in retrospect, when you see the big losses to Georgia, where you're allowing 40-plus points, to A&M allowing 40-plus points, losing to Florida State, of course, by 40-plus points, losing to Tennessee at home by 40-plus points. There's kind of a revolving door of just getting your ass kicked and the same mistakes over and over again from Matt House, and the same personnel errors where you're literally like watching this slow train crash where it's like, oh my God, they're going to do it, right? Boom. And it's like Matt House is just sitting back just like, oh my God, it did it again. Shit. And it's like, dude, this is like the 10th time you freaked out because you're doing the same thing over and over and over. Like you're like, this is a comedy of errors. Like some of the tapes of him freaking out in the booth were just hilarious. And the people he would blame, just madness. Matt House had to go. And it's kind of strange why he was even hired to begin with, if you think about it. Why was this NFL linebackers coach Hey, buddy, why was this linebackers coach from the Chiefs, this NFL linebackers coach, just suddenly given a defensive coordinator position? And he tried to pass off things that were just far too complex for these kids to grasp. And he was just like, "You're going to learn my defense or you're not going to play," like, and he just had this kind of old school, but not really old school, just more like bullshit, stubborn, ignorant kind of vibe of like, if you're young and you're good, I'm not going to play you. Like, literally, like Harold Perkins had to like literally LSU fans had to like threaten this man's life or something by it after the Tennessee game for him to finally start playing Harold Perkins last season. This year, it didn't really matter. Deshaun Womack wasn't going to play. This guy wasn't going to play. That guy wasn't going to play. This dude wasn't going to play in his right position. Like, he was just going to play the same stupid, shitty defense. And so it was an experiment that didn't work from Brian Kelly. And that I really don't know why they went down that route. But it would have been strange had, Brian Kelly's first decision, we're going to promote Blake Baker from linebackers coach to defensive coordinator. Like, I don't think that would have been possible at that moment. Blake Baker had to go and prove himself, and he did. He went to Missouri and turned their defense into they're like in the top 20, top 25 nationally in like every statistic, like yards allowed per play, yards allowed per game, points per game allowed. It's just incredible. It's incredible defense that they've had this last few seasons. 20.8 points per game, and they won 11 games last season. 11 games. It's pretty incredible what he's done there. So, defensive coordinator for me, Blake Baker. I like this hire. I don't know about you guys. I want to hear your comments because it'll be interesting to see what the fan base thinks about Blake Baker. I think most people, it seemed to be a popular choice, a popular move to hire Blake Baker, right? It seemed like that was the guy that the fans weren't calling for until it kind of became like his name was thrown in the mix. But his name was thrown in the mix very, very early. I remember that within like a day of House, us breaking the news that House was going to be fired, along with his entire staff. It was like, who's going to be defensive coordinator? Boom. The first few names, it was Blake Baker. And you could not argue with the pedigree because he had earned it over the last few seasons, playing at a school where you have to maximize everything you have. You're losing guys like a Mekhi Wingo, who's a hometown guy. You're losing him to like an LSU easy. It's sad, but it's true. So at a school like that, he had to really maximize, and he did. And they turned into a team that was they finished in the top 10, eighth ranked in the country. Missouri Tigers for Eli Drinkwitz won 11 games, went toe-to-toe against Georgia, only lost by 9 points. Crazy, crazy, crazy. LSU were the team that actually ran over his defense, and that's it. And we ran over everybody. That doesn't really say much. And then to me, I think Bo Davis was maybe even a bigger hire. Bo Davis, you're looking at our defensive line. We just barely even lost Mekhi Wingo and Mason Smith to the draft. Two guys that maybe you thought you could keep for at least another season. Both have 2 years left of eligibility, but you thought at least we could keep them 2 more seasons, right? Turns out you couldn't. And it turns out, like, LSU's defensive line were in a terrible spot numbers-wise, where Jalen Lee, Jacoby, and Guillory were like your only two pure defensive tackles left on roster. Gabe Relaford, Dominic McKinley coming in, which is some superstar power there, but they're freshmen. Luckily, you still got Deshaun Womack. You've lost Tyjee Hill. You lost Quincy Wiggins, a guy who could have been a really stunning specimen, but we never really found out with that experiment. Let me get my drink real quick. And so LSU's defensive line were in a really precarious spot. And what are we going to do? Well, the answer was we had to recruit, we had to develop, we had to go get guys out of the portal. We had to answer so many questions now. Like some of the biggest defensive line questions for LSU to answer, the most imminently dangerous defensive line questions for LSU to answer in a long time, since I can remember, where there was just like huge gaping holes on that LSU defensive line, huge gaping hole in the LSU defensive line staff, year after year after year of a different defensive line coach, sometimes multiple different defensive line coaches in the same year, even going back to the Orgeron era. Well, how are you going to recruit, develop? How are you going to go and attract all of the best transfer portal guys to plug these holes the best you can for next season? You pay the man. You do whatever it takes to get Bo freaking Davis. That's actually, we got to change that. It says $1.5 million. That was actually 1.25 per year, 3 year deal. Bo Davis, LSU alum under Pete Jenkins from 1990-92. Seriously, one of, if not, I think probably the best defensive line coach in America. A lot of people could argue, college-wise. 3-time national champion, did it twice with Alabama, sadly. Once with LSU, all 3 championships won on a Nick Saban staff. He was Saban's first hire at Alabama, first hire at Miami when he went to Miami in the NFL for that ridiculous experiment. So if Bo Davis, if Nick Saban is to be trusted, his judgment is to be trusted, I think Bo Davis is a pretty damn good defensive line coach, don't you think? I think Bo Davis. You saw the excitement of not only recruits, future prospects, guys like that, 5 stars, 4 stars, doesn't matter, hometown guys, but you also saw the old guard like Marcus Spears, Booger McFarland being extremely revved up about the hiring of Bo Davis. That's a Baton Rouge native who has made it on so many levels. At college level, he's been great at the NFL level. He's had a lot of different stops. Now's the time, I think, for him to go somewhere for a stretch of 5-something years. And being the defensive line coach at LSU doesn't get much better than that. Especially if you're a former defensive lineman from Baton Rouge who played for LSU, who we've always been trying to get him to come coach for us, and now he's going to be LSU's defensive line coach. If you're an LSU fan, I don't know how you couldn't be like more giddy than having Bo Davis coaching our defensive line. The problem is yes, you wish guys like Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo hadn't gone to the NFL. Especially now that you've gotten Bo Davis, that's something that's going to bother me for a bit. But if you look at who we do have, the potential of who we could bring in from the transfer portal, having Bo Davis, it's the asset that's going to really help LSU bridge that gap and paper over those cracks for the next season while we get the roster in gear. And then a year from now, I think you're going to see the true ultimate powers of what he's going to bring to the defensive line. But you're going to see the best coaching from him straight from out from the gates, because he's going to have his A game. But I think you're going to see guys like Braden Swinson have their best season yet under, Bo Davis, and of course a guy we're going to talk about as well in a bit, Kevin Peoples. So, Bo Davis probably to me might be the most important hire of this whole adventure. I mean, don't you think? It seems like Bo Davis is like, for LSU's defensive line to be so poor last season and kind of having diminishing returns for a few years now. It's been something that's been dark. It's been sickening to see, because you got guys like DJ Ojolari. You had guys like Ali Gay, who were never really maximized, never really developed. Like, he couldn't stop the run. There was just a lot of ways to expose some of our guys. Ojolari, you saw him reach somewhat close to his maximum. Kaylavon Chason, you saw him reach somewhat close to his maximum before he left LSU. Some of these guys, Jaquelin Roy, only just somewhat close to his maximum. It's just not enough. 1 second. He was climbing up some of his little play stairs. I had to move those, make it safer for him. But LSU has had poor defensive line play in a way, and some guys who you thought were going to be superstars only have like maybe one or a half of a good season. Really, Mekhi Wingo has had the best of all of the seasons of all these guys we're talking about. He was a number 18. He was an All-American, All-SEC. He put up numbers as far as like creating turnovers, recovering fumbles. Actually had some respectable sack numbers. He had some strong tackle for loss numbers. Made some great plays tackling. It was like the number 1 rated run stopper in 2022. Could have been in 2023 if he continued to play. He was really putting up good numbers as well. Had 5 pass breakups alone, 5 passes swatted in 2022. So you saw like one or two guys be successful through that time. But really, as a defensive line, imagine what some of these guys could have been had there been a real defensive line coach there over the last few years. A guy like Jimmy Lindsey I'm not even talking about him, because he wasn't even able to coach it down at LSU. So we don't even know what he would have been able to bring. And I think LSU's defensive line would have been markedly better had Lindsey been able to actually coach last season. Had he not have that health emergency, I think we all know that defensive line would have been in a lot better shape. But as it stood, that defensive line was poor. It was a shell of itself, especially when Mekhi Wingo went down. You saw some good games from like guys like Jacobian Guillory, so guys like Braden Swinson had some great games. Some games that actually he had some defensive plays that won games for LSU, I should say, by being the virtue of like the only guy making plays on defense. Like against Florida, his sack forcing a fumble. Against Missouri, his sack also forcing another fumble. Both were game-changing plays when you got a quarterback like Jaden Daniels with that offense. And so it's just like with Bo Davis, the possibilities of what this defensive line could be, and then you see the guy they hired as the edge coach, and then you have another guy like John Jancic also on staff, who's also won a championship with Georgia and has proven that he's been a good coach. Is he just going to be coaching the special teams, though? I'm not too sure about that. We'll talk about that in a bit. But My point is, we've got some damn good coaches here. Two of the best defensive line coaches in the country, regarded as well as proven on their resume. I'm very excited. Bo Davis is the pinnacle of all of that, I believe. Wrap that man in, some type of bulletproof vest. Keep him safe every night from everything, and just protect him, because he's going to be great for LSU for a long time. As long as he stays at LSU, LSU's defensive line is going to be always overachieving. You look across at the offensive line and what Brad Davis, another Davis, Brad Davis, and his Baton Rouge native, what he's done for LSU. You look over across now, Bo Davis. I think you're going to see both those guys kind of echo each other in the trenches. It's going to be a time of once in a generational type of recruiting and development here for LSU's trenchmen. You're seeing it with the offensive linemen, guys like Will Campbell, Emory Jones, Garrett Dellinger. You're seeing it all over the place with the offensive line. Defensive line, I think you're going to start to see that as well. Guys like Gabe Relaford could really come in and be awesome from the get-go. And they might need to this year. So Bo Davis, huge, huge, huge. I think you're going to start seeing his presence start to attract some targets to LSU. In fact, I've heard that there is one name from a team that Bo Davis has close relations to, or should I say former relations to, who will be coming to LSU, and someone that he has recruited heavily in the past. So that's already defensive line target that we've needed to bring in. We've got some good news coming there. Hopefully that will mean multiple as well after that. So we can kind of crack open that dam and get some more guys in there. And, Bo Davis isn't alone as far as like kind of an old school Louisiana coach coming back home to coach the home state, except that this next guy we're going to talk about, Corey Raymond. Corey Raymond did it for 9+ years. He was also a national championship winner in 2007 under Tommy Moffitt as an assistant on the strength and conditioning staff, much like Bo Davis was on part of that 03 staff at LSU. Corey Raymond won a ring in 07 and 2019 coaching LSU, and he did it coaching the DBs in 2019, all with guys he recruited. A DB room he built, led by 2 5-stars on each wing. Derek Stingley Jr., who should have won SEC Freshman of the Year in 2019, and arguably he should have won SEC Defensive Player of the Year in 2019. 6 interceptions, was so good. Targeted over 90 times and only allowed just under 20 catches. Incredible season from Derek Stingley Jr. Then Christian Fulton on the other side. But you look at the names of people he has coached and who he has developed. Even had just a hand in his last, say his first season at LSU, there was already a great room. But he made those guys even better. Ron Brooks, Eric Reed, Tyrann Mathieu, sadly, was only there for a camp with Corey Raymond as his coach before he was suspended. But Corey Raymond, he's put a lot of people in the NFL. And so there's a lot of questions though about Corey Raymond. Is Corey Raymond coming back? Is he a retread that LSU are going to really regret in a few years' time? Like, damn it, we thought we could go back, turn back the clock, and the time machine of Corey Raymond was just going to make it all go away. He was going to fix everything by, do you, Corey, just go recruit Louisiana and just go get us some talents and develop them, and just get us another Stingley, man. Get us another Patrick Peterson, bro. Like, it's sometimes it doesn't work like that. But you saw the excitement from all over the country when Corey Raymond was announced to go to LSU, from Juwan Johnson, 5-star commit to LSU, corner prospect that Corey Raymond is going to have a lot of fun developing over the next few years. I think should be a star at LSU. And I think that's the thing, is you're going to have more of a chance of the guy being a star with LSU when you got a guy like Corey Raymond. And you're going to be able to attract more superstar talents. Still, Robert Steebles did a damn good job at LSU with coaching the corners. I think just Matt House had too much to do with the coverages and was basically bossing all these guys around into coaching defense in a terrible way, his way or the highway kind of thing. And I think what you're going to see with Corey Raymond coaching kind of the safeties as well as the corners, kind of overseeing it all as a DB's coach in a way. We'll talk about the actual safeties coach. Don't get that mistaken. But overseeing it, I think it's going to be – you're going to see a lot more cohesion on this defense with Blake Baker. These are guys who all have known each other too. That's a great thing here. Blake Baker and Corey Raymond both on that 2021 staff together at LSU. Let's see here. But yeah, Corey Raymond, there's a lot of people, a lot of LSU fans who do not like this hire. I'm just going to say it right out loud. There's a lot of LSU fans who do not like this hire of Corey Raymond. They think, what are you doing, Kelly? Why did you go back, to a guy that he's washed up? And I get it. Corey Raymond had 2 bad recruiting seasons on his way out from LSU. He signed 2 players in 2021 and 2022 cycles, LT Welch and Demarius McGee. And only one of those guys actually played games for LSU. LT Welch, as like a couple times, I think he started one game or something like that. Had a pass breakup or something. Was not successful. Transferred. So he left in a way of it was not a strong showing from him on the way out. Kind of left in a whimper. And so the mythology around him was, he was just lucky with all of the talents. He was getting lucky with all the talents. But then when the talent started drying up once Raymond left and we had to go to the portal every single season to plug holes, it says something. It says something. And I think it spoke loud and clearly to Brian Kelly, this guy is freaking DBU, man. He is DBU, and there is no getting around it. And it's almost like Kelly was like, I have got to pay respects to that. And I've got to get the guy back who has 4 first-round draft picks on his resume, including a few top 5 picks and 5 second-round picks, and just put so many different guys into the NFL. You turn on an NFL playoff game, and chances are you're going to hear a few guys' names who he's coached or he recruited or he got commitments from. It's not just guys that he was somewhat knowing, but guys who he had a big hand in their development as players, as people. But after Corey Raymond, another guy who's very, 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 very familiar with Blake Baker over the last few years. Careful, buddy. Part of his Missouri staff, Kevin Peoples. He's going to coach the edge rushers. This is a Broyle Award nominee. His team's been incredible the last few years. 84 sacks and 443 pressures over 2022 and 2023 under Baker and Peoples for Missouri's defenses, according to Pro Football Focus. 84 sacks and 443 pressures in 2 seasons. That is impeccable. It is incredible. It is insatiable. It is brilliant. And it is exactly the opposite of the type of pressure and intensity LSU were able to generate. And it's more than just statistics. It was sustained, and it was beautiful. People's widely regarded as one of the best in the business. Widely regarded. And they constantly had guys that had pretty crazy seasons. Isaiah McGuire. So this is a guy that has a lot of trust from Baker. And Baker, as we reported, when we can post the link as well, we reported this to our subscribers when Peoples' name was first came out. It was almost immediately after Baker was hired that Peoples was going to be a must hire for Baker, like a guy that I have to have coming over with me from Missouri. I have to have this guy coming over with me from Missouri. And then On 3 reported Jake Olson would be a guy coming over from Mizzou. That was another must. You know, there's always going to be musts that some of these coaches, most of these coaches are going to have who come from these staff before. We're going to come kind of back them up and enforce their culture, as well as be guys that they really built their defensive philosophy around. Like, and Baker coaching the defense, you know, Kevin Peoples is his edge rushing and kind of his pass rushing guy. And Kelly thought it was important enough, if he's hiring Baker, he's got to hire Peoples. And so he's hiring this Broyle Awards nominee. And Peoples, I think he's going to be more in the slam dunk vein, because he doesn't really have a hard job. He's just got to make sure to secure the best matchups with Bo Davis and kind of work one side of the, one aspect of the defensive line to help out the edge rushers aspect of the defensive line and get the best opportune moments to get into the backfield. And Peoples has a good track record of doing that. And with a guy like Bo Davis, I think they're going to be able to really do some beautiful things. It's just, I hope they can get the players. You know, a guy like Colin Simmons committed to Texas because of Bo Davis. Don't rule him out being a Tiger either. Like, don't like just say, oh, hey, he's off limits now, he's not a Tiger. Dream big with a staff like this. When you got guys like Bo Davis and Kevin Peoples on the same freaking staff, that's recruiting power. That is development power. That's a powerhouse staff. Kevin Peoples is a big part of it. Don't, buddy, don't. Making your crazy racket, buddy. And then Jake Olson, who was announced yesterday, we knew he was hired on the staff. We didn't know what he was going to do, what he was going to be. We knew Olsen was going to be on the staff. We didn't know what he was going to do, what he was going to be. Then it came out he's going to be the safeties coach. And it was like, what? Wow. I wonder if he's ever been an on-field coach before. We knew he was only an analyst on the 2021 staff. So it was very like, wow. Kelly's going to give him a shot. It's going to be here at LSU that he's going to be the safeties coach? Really? Olsen, he has extensive time coaching in Louisiana. Nichols, Northwestern State, ULM, LSU for that season as a defensive analyst working with Baker and the linebackers. Then he goes to Missouri the last few seasons, coaching linebackers, analyst on that Missouri defensive staff under Baker and alongside Kevin Peoples. He came with Baker to Baton Rouge when Baker was hired, just like Peoples. And now those three will be on the staff. There's familiarity there. But not only that, there's familiarity between Olsen, Baker, and Raymond as well. So you got a kindred spirit there. And then you can't tell me that there's not going to be some, mutual admiration or at least kinship between Kevin Peoples and Bo Davis as defensive line coaches who are maybe do different things, but they should work in concert beautifully. And Jake Olsen is a wild card pick here because he might not work out as a safeties coach. This is the first time I think he's even coached safeties. I know he's been a defensive analyst that's coached linebackers. I have no clue if he's been a safeties coach in any shape or form, either as an analyst or, and I'm not sure he's ever been an on-field coach at Northwestern State or anywhere else. Spent 4 seasons at Northwestern State. Are you hammering something? Huh? Paul Bunyan, what are you doing? He's got this damn little ball he's just bashing boxes with. Oh. Olsen is a gamble because LSU have been very bad at safety the last few seasons. And it's been there's been way too much of a belief in a guy like, and he's coming back this next season. I don't want to be like Major Burns. He has had a few bad seasons at LSU. He had one good season at LSU, and then he's had a few bad seasons here. He's done some good things. The pick 6 against Missouri. He's had some tackles for loss in the backfield. His best game, make no mistake, was this last game against Wisconsin. He was making a lot of plays in the backfield. I think he had something like 2.5 TFLs in that game. He was all over the place. And it was like, that's Major Burns to me. You get him in the box and you let him attack. And that's really what his game is. How many times did you see him caught in the headlights in coverage? Well, I can just tell you right now, right here. And Major Burns, y'all, he played a lot of snaps, but he also allowed the most touchdowns of anyone last season. He allowed 6 direct touchdowns. 6. 6 touchdowns that he allowed. Major Burns allowed 6 touchdowns, y'all. Andre Sam allowed 2 touchdowns. And both allowed close to over 30 catches. I mean, Andre Sam allowed 24. Major Burns allowed 36 catches from 46 targets. He allows a catch at 78.3%. LSU have, if they're going to stick with Major Burns, that's fine. But you have to have someone next to him who is a pure coverage guy, who's going to be that free safety, that center fielder. And then you have Major Burns almost as like another linebacker. And then the nickel has got to be maybe a more coverage guy. You know, like you've got to really be smart about this if you have Major Burns in there and know his deficiencies as well as his strengths. And so Jake Olson coming in and coaching the safeties at LSU, what can we do there? Move Sage Ryan back at free safety? I think that can work. Get him to bulk up a bit. I think you should give that a shot. That's his natural position. I think you should have to find out if he can cut the mustard there, right? He's only really played nickel and corner. He only played safety during a spring game. So we've never really found that out. And some are going to say, well, he can't tackle. Well, sure, no one can tackle when you're 15 yards off in soft coverage and they're throwing short hitches. Like, when you give those type of athletes that much space and time to run at you, to get steam, a bunch of steam, gathered steam coming at you, you're done for. When you saw Sage Ryan on the ball, Johnny on the spot, he was making plays in the backfield. He had 4.5 tackles for loss. So you can't tell me he can't tackle, especially when he loaded up the field. And he did have a few misses. Yeah, the time he went for the strip and got whirled around and the guy went flying through him, like that was bad. And he had some moments. But you cannot tell me Sage Ryan wasn't one of LSU's better defenders this last season. He was. And he might have been LSU's best coverage person, I think. I think you could make a strong argument to say either him or Zy Alexander were LSU's best cover guy this last season. Zy Alexander has more, succulent stats, but Sage Ryan really performed strong over the entire season. He had some bad moments, but look at the coverage he's in. And then look at how many big plays he gave over the top. He only gave up a couple big plays. And he was never charged with a direct touchdown. So I think you have that guy at center fielder kind of playing, the deep ball. I like that. I like Sage Ryan in that position. That's an interesting spot for me, playing him a free safety. So Jake Olson, he's going to have a lot of questions. Questions about whether he can do this. Questions how he can do this. Who he's going to stick with back there. And I'm not too certain he should, hey, you're a veteran, so we're going to stick with you. Hey, you're the most experienced guy. I got to have your back. You've been there for me. I'm going to trust you, and so I'm just going to play you nonstop, which is what we've seen from Matt House, which is what we've seen from Kerry Cooks, who just stuck with Andre Sam and Major Burns come hell or high water. Those dudes could have missed 10 tackles in a quarter and were never coming off the field. When you know that, it's defeating. Someone like Ryan Yates know that, hey, I should be playing and I'm not even have a chance of getting on the field. And that's another dude. He can play nickel, he can play corner, he can play safety. That's another guy that Blake Baker, Corey Raymond, Jake Olson, whoever it's going to be, they've got to find a home for this dude. Just like him, Jordan Allen, Sage Ryan, they've got to find positions for these guys, positional homes for 2024, and start it right now. Ask them what they want to play, figure out what's best for the team, what's best for the staff, what's best for everything, what's best for the kid most of all, and his development in the next level, and go with it and stay there. And maybe if there's some serious injuries, okay, we can talk about it and we can possibly switch you back. And unless that happens, you keep these guys there. I think you keep Jordan Allen as a corner. And then I think you go with Sage Ryan as a safety. I think you go with Javion Toviano as a corner. And I think you actually start Javion Toviano. He was awesome. Ashton Stamps, what's he going to be like under Corey Raymond as well? That's another interesting question I have. Hey, Bubba. What's up, my little Goomba? He's watching Bluey. You know that Australian show, Bluey? He's watching that crazy shit. So, yeah, what do you think about this entire staff in all? Which coach are you hyped on? Which coach are you kind of concerned about? I'm kind of worried about this guy. I don't think he's got what it takes to coach at LSU. Tell us. Let it out. Don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed to have an opinion. And don't be ashamed to have a different opinion than everybody else. Just because a lot of people are excited about Corey Raymond's arrival means nothing. It doesn't mean anything about, Bo Davis being here even. As good and accomplished as he is, he still has to prove it as well. He has to earn his money as well. We will call these coaches to attention. We will call these coaches on their shit. We expect the best from these coaches because they're supposed to be the best. Bo Davis, you're supposed to be the best defensive line coach in America. Your resume pretty much proves that. I mean, let's go over some of the names that Bo Davis has coached. Okay? Like just from his Alabama stretch. We're just going to take like a small chunk of his career and just talk about that. Okay? Because I think it goes pretty far in explaining the thing. We can go through the whole thing and go by name. But I think when you just cut like a sliver out and just see all of what you accomplished in one small place, it's pretty incredible. And it's during his time at Alabama. Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, Donta Hightower, Terrence Cody, Marcel Darius, Courtney Upshaw. That's just a few freaking names of guys that he coached there at Alabama. That's just a few. And I'm sure I'm missing out on a ton of them because I'm not really obsessed with Alabama where I'm like, yes, I got to remember every Alabama player's name. I remember, if they are central to college football and being a college football junkie, I'll remember them, of course, but Bo Davis, everywhere he went, he seemed to recruit the best, develop the best. And, I mean, look what he did just barely at Texas, taking them to their first college football freaking playoff. I mean, it's absolutely insane that he's gotten them to their first playoff. Beaten Alabama, his old mentor. Devondre Sweat, turning him into a superstar. High top left, draft pick there. Baron Sorrell. They had a damn good, and that's the thing is like, what also excites me about a guy like Bo Davis is what his defensive line does to help the linebackers. Just keep that in mind too. Our linebacking core are fantastic. over the next few seasons. I'm really excited about our linebacker corps. We've got Harold Perkins this next year still. Devon Keys coming in. I mean, are you kidding me? Okay, put Devon Keys to the side for 1 second. I'm getting far ahead of myself. We got Harold Perkins and Greg Penn III and West Weeks returning. Okay, that right there is a strong, kick-ass linebacking corps, just right there. Now you've got a dude like Devon Keys coming in, Tylen Singleton, a Louisiana freight train, and then Xavier Debo Atkins, who had a 200 tackle season in Louisiana, and then had another 100 tackle, I think he had something like 25 TFLs and a pick 6 in Texas. So he did it at the pinnacle of both states, probably the two best football states in the nation, Louisiana and Texas. You have those guys coming in to play linebacker as well, who are going to benefit from Kevin Peoples, from Bo Davis, just, smacking that ass up front. Those guys are going to be coming in there and cleaning up the mess and absolutely getting sacks, TFLs, forced fumbles, scooping scores. I anticipate those guys to at least set that linebacking core free. And I think Kevin Peoples coming over from Missouri to LSU and being a absolute must for Blake Baker tells me that he has a vision for Harold Perkins. He has a vision for the young man he recruited originally a few years back and who planted those seeds that LSU were able to sprout, and get him to become a Tiger. I think Blake Baker has the keys to the kingdom in order to unleash Harold Perkins at his best. I think he knew it all along. I think he should have stayed at LSU all along. And we're going to find that out maybe the hard way this season when Harold Perkins has an unbelievable year that makes his freshman year look like kindergarten. And I think that'll be because Blake Baker, Kevin Peoples have a vision, and they're going to understand. And Bo Davis is going to exactly know what's up. He's going to be easy for them to work with. Jake Olson is right on board. These are all guys, Corey Raymond, these are all guys who are going to be able to sit in a room, and there's not going to be factions. There's not going to be divisions. There's not going to be a mutiny. Some of the stories I have heard about what happened and what was wrong about this last year's defense, or what made things go wrong, would make your blood curdle as LSU fans. The stories of dysfunction and factions and disorder and dismay and the players being quit on by the coaches, basically just the coaches giving up on their players and just mailing it in, knowing they were going to be fired, knowing their fate was sealed. And the players thinking that the coaches are going to return because that's all they're hearing. They're being lied to by the coaches too. And that's the thing, is there just was all these sorts of vibes that were just not conducive. I think you're going to see so much of that turn around and things become a lot more straightforward and simple and ass-kicking with this defense. I think this defense is going to be about aggression, about intensity, and about really bossing games in the trenches, dominating games in the trenches, making plays at the back end. I think you're going to see an awesome defense here. I think you're going to see a defense that is maybe not going to be a top 15 defense, maybe not even a top 25 defense after going, 107th. But I think you're going to see a damn good defense in comparison. Robert LeBlanc says, do you think Greg Penn could take the next step? I mean, he's been really good with tackling. I think he was second in tackling in 2022. And now, what was he? Number 1 in tackling for LSU this last year? Let's see. But his problem was he was being completely picked off in coverage. Greg Penn allowed like 3 touchdowns himself too, 3 or 4. So he was picked on in some big games as well in coverage. And that's another reason why Whit Weeks needs to play. Greg Penn was second to Major Burns in tackles, 6.5 TFLs, 4 sacks, pretty high sack number there. 2 interceptions, both of those were beautiful plays. 1 pass breakup, 1 forced fumble. Really, the big problem was him in coverage. I think he's kind of like half taken the next step already, but I think there's a chance there could be better linebackers coming in that he's going to have to battle with for playing time this next season. He's going to have to really watch his back when you got a guy like Devon Keys and you got a guy like Tylen Singleton, who they can tackle, but they can also cover, and they can come in and they can play as freshmen. I'm really convinced of that with Devon Keys, especially. Like, he's undersized, and you could play him as like a hybrid nickel. You could play him as a strong safety. You could play him in a few different places. You could play him as like a hybrid edge rusher nickel. It's crazy what you can do with Devon Keys' athleticism. Everybody, tell us which coach you are most hyped on, which coach you're most concerned about. Let us know. This is LSUODYSSEY.com, brought to you by ReleafMed. We're going to take a 5-minute break here, kind of get some water into us, kind of relax for a second, and then hopefully come back here, take your comments, your questions. Load up the questions. Load up the comment section. Ask us anything you want. We've been beating the pavement, trying to figure out where LSU's going with offensive coordinator, and we'd like to finish up with that. Offensive coordinator, I have a really good feeling that, there's some names that are interesting to me. Tommy Rees, coaching the tight ends as well as being the offensive coordinator, co-offensive coordinator with Joe Sloan. Joe Sloan being co-OC quarterbacks coach. That's a possibility I could see happening. Tommy Rees coming out of the shade, ashes of Alabama. Let's look that up right now. He could be getting fired as we're speaking about this. Let's make sure. Yep. Oh, and Alabama football analysts and support staff go under under DeBoer. Okay, well that doesn't. So right now, as of now, he's still at Alabama. I don't think that's going to be staying for good. So now Tommy Rees might have all the incentive he needs to go to LSU and to join up with his guys, Brian Kelly and Dean Petzing, who he knew from the Notre Dame staff. Maybe it's that time. This is a guy who Brian Kelly absolutely adores and loves. Brian Kelly's always going to give him a call. Brian Kelly's always going to want him to possibly come over and be the OC/tight ends coach. That was his first pick, just like Bo Davis was his first pick. Brian Kelly, by all intents and purposes, is building a championship staff. I believe Tommy Rees is going to be that last piece to that puzzle. It only makes sense right here. Frank, DeBoer is going to offer a lot. DeBoer is going to offer possibly a lot for Tommy Rees to stay, or we'll actually find out if DeBoer wants to move in a quick direction very quickly here. He might not even want Tommy Rees to be his guy. So Tommy Rees is going to have options here. Tommy Rees is going to have the possibility to leave here. It wasn't really that straightforward before with Nick Saban. You're coaching a guy that could give you a national championship ring every single season. Now that's out the door. You have no clue where Alabama's headed. And you're watching so much of your talent headed right out that door. It's got to be killing Tommy Rees. So Brian Kelly, LSU, that offensive staff, Joe Sloan might not be ready to coach, to coordinate an offense by himself. But alongside Tommy Rees, could that work? Tommy Rees, Joe Sloan. Because I think if you don't give Joe Sloan a co-OC spot and you just give Tommy Rees the OC spot, that might backfire badly. So I'm thinking Tommy Rees is very much in play here. And I think you've really got to keep an eye on him being the next potential OC, co-OC for LSU here. And that's where we stand on that with the offensive coordinator. Load up the comment section. We're gonna take a little intermission. Actually, wow, we've been doing this for quite some time. We will be doing another show at some point this weekend. Everybody, happy Friday.